Okay, hello and welcome to another OK Motorsports Siemens NX tutorial. My name is Aiden, and today we're going to be going over some basic surface modeling. So to start, you can pull up your Siemens NX and you can kind of follow along with my video. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new part, and that's going to pop up with this window right here. And there's a lot of different things that you could select from these menus up here. If you want to do drawing, like layout simulations, all of these different things you have access to. But your most basic one is going to be just creating a model. So we're going to go to that, and then always make sure that you have units selected to millimeters. If you have it in inches, you can't change that after the fact. And we want all of our EV1 parts to be in millimeters. So make sure that is following the convention for whatever car you're designing that year. Then down here, we can go to and actually name the file. So here, this is where you'll go to the parts numbering list, which is in the drive. And we've gone over this before, so I won't cover it in detail, but every single file will have first its part number, and then followed by the description in all caps. So for this project, I'm gonna, it's a practice, it's not going in Wikifactory, so I'll just call it computer mouse, because that is what I'm going to be designing today. Commuter mouse, whatever. Spelling is for nerds. Okay, and then underneath that, we have the folder. This is where it's actually going to save the file. So this is where you will find the Wikifactory file that it should go to. So go to C, Wikifactory, whatever car you're designing in, and whatever sub-team you're in. And this is where it will have a list of all those, the different parts with all of their part numbers, and everything will be in a list there. And this is where your parts and stuff should be saved. So I'm just going to save this into like my drive documents. Sure. Mark II CAD, why not? So that's just like the folder that I'm saving in, and I just need somewhere to put things for this tutorial. So I'm going to create OK, and that's going to open up this file that I can start designing in. So in order to lay out the basics of surface modeling, a really good way to do things is think of like sections and ribs for where you want your surface to attach to. So we're going to basically set up a bunch of different sketches, and the surface that we put onto the sketch is kind of like going to be a cloth that drapes over top of our sketches. So for the very first thing that I'm going to do is just draw a basic outline of a computer mouse in a couple of different views. So the first one, which will be my master, I'm going to draw on the bottom plane. So I go up here to Sketch and select my top plane. That's the one I'm going to sketch on. And this is where I can just do some basic sketching of a computer mouse. So I'll go up to the line, and I'll draw this, there. I'll do another one down below. And then I will connect the two in some sort of arc right about there. And this is just like, top-down view of a computer mouse. Doesn't have to be super precise, but what it does have to be is fully defined. You see right now how some of the lines are yellow? That means that it's not fully defined. If it's black, it is defined. So as a rule of thumb, every single one of your sketches should be fully defined. This is something that you want to get in the habit of early on in your design learnings, because it's really important to have things fully defined, not least because it causes issues down the road, but in the short term, it actually slows down your computer, because everything that is left undefined, the computer has to basically pick a number for every, choose by itself, and it's going to be something really long and take up a lot of data, so it does actually slow down your computer to have things undefined. So yeah, anyway, to define things, you can basically just click on the line, and it comes up with a dimension. 150 millimeters sounds like a lot for the back of the mouse. I'm going to go like 35 millimeters. And the first thing that pops up, since this is the first dimension in my sketch, it's wanting to know if I want my whole sketch to scale to this size. And I'm going to click yes, because otherwise it would start changing proportions. But in this case, it just scaled everything down and kept the proportions the same. So that just makes things a little bit easier for me. I'm going to define the height of this as well. So half the length of my mouse could be something like 45 millimeters. And then I also have to just define this line back and forth as well. You see how I could just drag that to one side? I'm going to make it in the middle of this vertically dotted line. So if I hover over it, and then there, see how it comes up with my midpoint? I can click on that, and then click on the dotted line, and then press Make Coincident. And there we go. Now, there's one more thing that I want to make absolutely clear, which is that NX right now is considering this fully defined, right? I've defined it left and right. It's got a length. It's got a distance off of this ground plane, so it knows where that line is. But if I were to come along and basically start over defining the sketch, it will actually allow me to do that. So if I create a dimension from that line to say this point, which is 17.5, but if I change that to be 14, now it let me move that. And the reason was, even though I had it snapped to the center point previously, NX left that as a slightly flexible constraint. So if it was defined in a different way, then it says, okay, I can break this constraint in order to meet this new dimension. Now, this is actually a bad thing, because if you set up your sketch in a specific way using constraints the way you want them to be, and then as you're going back and forth and editing different sketches in order to change things to be the way you want them to be, it could conceivably delete some of the constraints that you previously set up and that could have been important to you. So in order to avoid this, it's always very important to have this feature up here selected called Create Persistent Relations. If you can't see this right now, just go to your drop-down menu and make sure this is selected right here, Create Persistent Relations. So if you don't have this turned on, nothing means anything. The world is a lie. We're living in a simulation, and NX can ignore some of your inputs, and that's very bad. We want to avoid that. So basically, I'm going to leave this on now, delete that, and now I'm going to make a new constraint between this point and midpoint, make coincidence. There we go. So now it's snapped there, and if I try again to make a new sketch, it's really obvious, like, when I do this, that I'm breaking that relation that I previously made, but sometimes it's not always obvious. If you're like deleting some dimensions and creating new ones, NX can randomly decide to break mates, even if it doesn't have to. Yeah, so anyway, when I do this new one, 14 millimeters, it will say, hey, you've got a relation here that can't be broken, so it's not going to change that, which is good. That's what I want. Also, by the way, if you ever wanted to delete a relation, I will show you how to do that now. Basically, you just hover over the line, and then it's showing this little circle around that dot. That is a constraint, a coincident constraint. So I basically have to hover over that until it turns red, and then I left click, and it turns pink. And now that is sort of relaxed, and I could grab lines and start moving them around. It's not showing me, maybe if I try to dimension that. 14, okay, so it didn't actually work. Let me just make sure that this is working, because it is another useful tool to be able to delete relations. So I hover over until I'm there. So the mate is turned red, I select it, and now it's pink. Maybe if I press enter. And then I want to try and break that mate. No, it's still not working. Okay. All right, maybe that's just something to do with NX because it's being super finicky right now. If all else fails, you could always delete this line and redo it. But if you have any other sketch later on down in your item tree that references this line, and you delete that line, that reference is going to be broken, and it's going to cause some issues. So just be aware of like how you're making changes when you delete things. But that's not to say never delete anything, obviously. Sometimes you need to. But anyway, I'm just going to move on from this because I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway, yeah, because we just got to move on. So I'm going to continue to dimension this. I'll make it 40, so why not? And then I want to make this midpoint in the center. So I'll do coincidence. There we go. And then I'll also define the length of this, I suppose. I'll make that one 40 millimeters. I'm just making stuff up as I go. No big deal. Okay, and then here I'm actually going to show you a useful way to make things mirrored, like symmetrical. So if I wanted this arc to be as symmetrical as that one, first of all, I'll just define one of the arcs with a radius. Maybe I'll make that 65 millimeters. That's a little bit too big, 75. There you go. So if I want this to be like just linked to that, this sketch, it's easy to go up here and select make symmetric. So that pops open, and then here it's asking me for a couple of different things. The first one is select motion curve or point. This is the thing that you want to move into the right place. So that would be this line. And then the second one is select stationary curve or point. This is the thing that I want to define everything off of. So that's this line. And then select symmetry line. So this could be a construction line as well, like I could draw another line. Or in this case, I'm actually going to use this vertical dotted line and just make it symmetric about that. See how it snaps? And then I press OK. And now it has defined this as that. So if I change this number to be 80, you can see that it automatically updates those sides. This is a really simple scenario. And in cases that are this simple, it might actually be more efficient just to make two dimensions or just make them equal to each other. Because if I use this make equal constraint, that would also do the exact same thing I just did. But if you have a much larger, like if you have multiple lines, for example, that all needed to be mirrored onto the other side of your axis, this mirror constraint is a great way to do that. Anyway, let's move on from that. So I'm going to press finish. Now I've created this sketch, which is pretty nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is create two more profiles, one on the front and one on the back of the mouse. And this is going to be more of a side profile, as you can see. So the first thing that I'm going to do is go to the front of my mouse. Let's say it's this side. And I'm going to draw like a little shape that is, you know, what the mouse is. Now, in order to draw on a plane that's in that spot, I need to create a new plane that is where I need it to be. So I go up to here to datum planes, and now I've got to, you know, this is showing you where my new plane is, and I've got to put that in the right spot. So I could just select 45, which, you know, that's the distance between there and there. So this would work fine, except that if I ever changed that 45 millimeter number in my sketch, then my plane wouldn't automatically update and follow that. So if I wanted to make it follow, then what I can do is use a different way to define my plane. So one of the ways is, let me look here, point and direction. Or we could do on curve. I'm going to try this point and direction one. So this one says specify point. My point is going to be midplane, right there. And then it also wants a direction, but right now it looks like it's already defining my direction as, you know, this y-axis, which is what I want. So that's snapped to that line now. So if I then change the position of that line, the plane would update and move with the line. So I'm going to press OK, and now I can go ahead and sketch on this datum plane. There we go. Now, notice that when we went into this sketch, it flipped me upside down. And that's because it's just the way that it's defined this datum plane as right side up. I actually find this really, really annoying because, you know, my z-axis is pointed straight up. I could just start modeling upside down, but that's annoying. I could model right side up, but then my part would be, you know, upside down, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it gets, it's something more you have to deal with when you start importing into assemblies or like if you wanted to 3D print this thing. So basically there is a way to change this. If I jump back out, and I go back into editing this plane, it asks me if I want to reverse the direction. If I click on that, see how it then points the arrow in this other direction? This should make it so that right side up is right side up when I edit this plane. It's just a little bit of a quirk. Yeah, there you go. And it's kind of annoying, but it's just as easy to do it this way. So yeah, so now basically I want to create an arc that is snapped to that flat line that I created at the top of my sketch. So I'm just going to go to here, make an arc. It's asking me if I want to do like a defined by the center point or defined by 3 point. 3 point is really easy, so I'm just going to do something like that. There we go. And that's about kind of the shape of the back of my mouse. But you can see that, of course, it's undefined because I haven't defined it yet. But I also want to snap it to these corners, right? So I want those corners to line up. In order to reference those corners, I need to include them into my sketch. So I go up here to this tool called Include, and now I can click on things. I can click on anything, and it'll then show up as a construction geometry in my new sketch. So I want this line. I'm going to click on that, press OK. There we go. Now, even if I go back to horizontal, I can see that line in my sketch. So now I just have to define this as connecting to that endpoint. So I click on both of them and make coincident. Now it snaps. Same thing on the other side. Make coincident, snaps to there. And now I just have to define my radius of my circles, and that can be anything I want. I'm going to make it 25. Sure, that looks good. And I'm going to come back in and edit things once I get a better idea of like the shape of my mouse. If I want to tweak things, I can always come back and tweak the sketches, and that'll update the whole assembly. Cool, so I've done this one on the front. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the back of the mouse. So this is where I'm planning to have my actual like left and right mouse buttons. That's going to be on this side. So the shape I'm going to draw is going to be a little bit different. But first, I'm going to create a datum plane. Same thing, specify point and direction. I'm going to specify this point. And I believe if I flip the direction, it'll be right side up. Let's see how that goes for me. Sketch on plane. Yeah, it's right side up. OK. So then again, I'm going to include this line. Press OK. Go back to normal 2. And then I will, instead of just an arc, I'm actually going to create a little bit of a box structure that looks something like this. And I'll add a little bit of an arc on top of that, just because I can. And you can do, a bunch of different things depending on what mouse shape you want. This is just the one that I'm doing, so feel free to follow along. I'll make that 10 millimeters, and I think it already made these two things equal for me. Make equal? Yeah, OK. And so now I just have to define this, and that's going to be pretty big. Let's say 65. Cool. Finish. All right, so now I've got a basic structure that I could start doing surface modeling on. I've got the beginning, I've got the end, I've got some sort of outline in the middle. And so let me actually go through to surface modeling and show you like how to set that up. I'll add some more advanced features just a bit later. So to start surface modeling, I'm going to go up here where it says surface, click on that. And then here's a couple of different tools that you can use for surface modeling. The one that I'm going to use is through curves. If you've used other programs, this might be called a loft. It's very similar. But essentially, I can add a couple of different points. Wait, can I? Oh, hang on. It might actually be in this other one. Through mesh? Yes, this is it. So yeah, sorry about that. Basically, now I can start by creating a couple of different surface curves that this will follow. So the first one is going to be this one at the back. And then the second one is going to be the one at the front. So in order to select, like if I just clicked on this right now, it wouldn't actually select that as a new curve. I need to go here and select Add Primary Curve. Press that button, and now I can click this. And why is it not working? Is that because I used the wrong one? I always get confused between these three buttons because they look exactly the same. Let me try using swept. Yeah, OK, this is similar to what I remember. Select curve. From there, add new section to there. Why isn't it working? Maybe I need to add a guide curve, but that's not right. It should right away just start showing me my curve. So I don't know what's up. what if I just try making another sketch? I'm going to make a sketch in the middle this time, and it's going to be a big arc. So let's say I'm doing the big like main body of my mouse that's like pretty tall. So you know the surface that I'm creating is going to start there, going to go up to there, and then down, and that's kind of like a dome shape of a mouse, right? Also I want it to snap to these curves. And so the way that I can do that is, instead of using this include feature, which will just like project the line onto my datum plane, I'm going to go up here to more, and then one of these options is intersection point. So if I click intersection point and this curve, it actually creates a new point only where that curve intersects the plane. And that's what I wanted. So I'm going to apply, and then same thing on this side. Apply. Cool. And now I can snap these ends to those points. I'm pretty sure this is going to work. I'm not sure why that didn't before. And then I'll make radius. Actually, instead of doing that, I'm going to delete my radius. Okay. I'm actually going to make it a half circle. So I'm going to define this center point as being on that line. Sure. Okay, finish that. Now, this is the simplest function, so I'm pretty sure it should work. I'm just going to make a surface that connects these two curves. So go back up to surfaces, swept, this curve, add new section, this curve. What in the heck? Is it one of the other ones? Through curve? Okay, I'm going to try adding a cross curve now. This is just getting more and more complicated, but that's okay. Bear with me. This is a lot of the work that we do in NX, to be honest. There's kind of some troubleshooting that needs to go on no matter what. So going back up to home, I'm going to sketch onto my top model, and I'm going to create a spine curve. This is sort of a curve that it follows along the side. And if I tried to select just the sketch that I had made before, it would select the entire sketch, so like all profiles. I don't actually want that. I just want one of the sides that traces the side of my profile. So what I'm going to do is just include one of these side sketches. I go to include, there, apply, and then that's just a construction line. It's not actually going to be visible outside of my sketch. So I need to make it visible, and the way I do that is just tracing a real curve over top of it. From that side to that side, and then I will make both of these equal. Make equal. There we go. So that's snapped to there. Finish. And I'm going to come back later and do the other side, but just to see if I can get my surfaces to work. Pretty sure it is through curves. I'm going to select this one. Okay, I'm going to try this swept function. Not exactly sure the differences between these two. This one, add section. This one, and then this where it says guide 3 maximum, this is where I'm going to add that single curve on the side there. So I'm going to select this so that it knows I'm selecting the guide. And see how I hover over this and it is highlighting this entire like big sketch? That's because it's still visible and it's just not letting me select the one underneath. So I'm going to go over here and click on this little eyeball, and that's going to hide the big sketch. Now when I click on this, I know I'm selecting this last one over here. So I select that. Hey, there we go. We just needed a guide curve. Okay, good to know. So that is creating a cool little geometry between one curve and another. In fact, I can go back up to my first section, add a new section, and then I can click on the last one, and it'll even connect those together for me. Now this end is super, super janky. And the reason is because it's connecting this side of the curve to that side of the curve. And so in order to fix that, you can actually go over here and select reverse direction. Notice this little arrow, it's going to jump to the other side of the curve. That little arrow is kind of just showing you which side of the curve is going to what side of the curve. So this arrow is connected to that arrow, is connected to that arrow. Cool. And you can see that that's kind of uneven, so I'm going to then trace my other guide curve, which is going to go along this surface, and make it more contoured for me. Okay, I'm going to jump back into home in order to draw a sketch on my top plane. And then same thing, I'm including this side, dropping an arc on top of that. press exit in order to now select them, both of them, and make equal. Now I've created a new one. Okay, so back into surfaces. I'm using the swept geometry. Oh, and since this curve was the last one I selected, it thinks that I want to use that as my first section curve, and that's actually not the case, so I'm going to, I think if I click anywhere, it'll unselect it. There we go. So now I can select this as my first curve, add new section, second curve, add new section, third curve. And now I want to create my guides. Select curve, guide number 1. See now again it's highlighting the entire sketch, which I don't want. I'm going to go over here, hide that. There's my first guide curve. And now here, remember I have to add a new guide. Click right there, and then click on that. Boom. And now we've totally created like a doable profile for our mouse. Now there's a couple more parameters down here that you can adjust in order to make like the start and end curves more consistent. So cubic, linear. So if I just like start playing around with these settings, you'll see that they do slightly different things. Linear means I'm drawing a straight line between one and the other. You can see how that's like more of a flat curve. It's still not flat because, oh yeah, but like it's, each point along here corresponds to a point along this curve. And it's just drawing a whole bunch of straight lines between each of those points, and that's how it's developing the curve. If I want it to be more smooth, I could go back to cubic, and that kind of makes it continuous across this curve. And alignment parameters by arc. Yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can set them up. And oh, this is kind of interesting. If I do alignment by points, you see how before it was just kind of connecting this corner up to a random point on this arc and kind of blending between them. That's because obviously this is the only arc that has a hard edge, and it's got to make that go to somewhere. If I select by points, I can actually draw those curves. Like I can just click and move them along a place. There's also another way to do it. You can do arc length, and that is just figuring out, okay, this, that point is happening like 10% up from along this curve, and this one is at like 90%. So I just go to this curve and I'm like, okay, 10% is right about there, and that's where I connect the two lines. So that's how that one is working. But anyway, if I wanted to create a more consistent profile across this mouse, the only way I could do that is just add a third guide curve. And I'm going to jump back just because I want to make my mouse the way I want. So this time I will sketch on the right plane. And I need to get the intersection points of each of these curves so that I can draw like a top profile. So the way I'll do that, again, remember, go back up to more, intersection point, and I can click on that curve. Apply and see how it creates that dot. Same thing with this one, apply, and same thing with this one, apply. Cool. And so now I've got 3 dots that I can connect together. And you can do this with just a simple 3-point arc, where you could go from there to there, and then make it snapped to that last point. Or, I'm going to press Command-Z to undo that. You could also do it with a spline. The spline would just give you a little bit more control over each of the points. Remember to double-click on your last point. Or actually, no, I'm going to click once to snap to there, and then I'm going to press OK. Definition default, cannot retain the spline. I think I just want to press OK. Yeah, because this is giving me a little bit of adjustment capability. So if I wanted to make it more linear at the end, I can grab this and move things around to make it more mouse-shaped. I think a mouse is a little bit longer at the back and more flat towards the front, so that looks pretty good. Now, again, do as I say, not as I do. Remember, we always want to have our curve fully defined, and splines can be a little bit tricky to fully define. But I'm going to do that just so that it doesn't slow down my program later on. It's just a little bit of annoying because you have to go between each one of these and define the x and y coordinates for these points. And I'll go 40, and this should fully define it. There we go. All right, finish. And now this is going to be the final guide curve that I use. So one more time, I'm going to go back into surfaces, click on swept. And then this curve is going to go from there, new section to there, new section to there. And then I'm going to add a guide curve there. Oh, remember, you got to hide that previous one. There's my guide curve. And right now, I can see that it is creating an erroneous connection between those two points. So again, I think I can just click on this arrow, and that'll reverse it. No, it won't. Okay, how do I reverse that one line? I can't reverse this one because that's the last point. Oh, okay, I have to pay attention to it while I'm setting up because I can't go back in and edit that. That's one of the kind of annoying features of NX, but oh well. So again, select this curve, and I want to make sure this time that all my arrows are on the right side as I collect them. New section, that's the right arrow, new section, there we go. Now I'm going to add a curve, hide this sketch, there's a spline, and then add a new guide curve, there's my new guide curve, and then one more time, I'm actually going to use this one as my new guide curve, so add a new curve and select that. And there you go, that snaps your curve together. And that is looking really, really sexy. I can also mess around a little bit with my parameters just to make it consistent. So I'll drag those to the side. Actually, if I go by length, yeah, that's pretty darn consistent, so I'll go with that. Okay, cool. And so now I've created a little bit of a shell for my mouse. So the next thing I have to do is cap off the front and back, and then also make a part for the bottom. So to start, I'm going to cap off the front. If there is a tool that just automatically does this, and it is a little bit hard to find. You have to go into More, Gallery, and then Offset, Flange. I think it's here, the Fill Gallery, and then Patch, and then you got to go Fill Surface, which is already selected. Yeah, sometimes they can just be hard to find. So what I'm going to do is just go up to the search bar and type in Fill. And then here I can click on Fill Surface, and I'm automatically using, just in case, like it's annoying to sometimes add features to your item tree up here. So that's just an easy shorthand way of doing it. So now I want to select a curve. This is the curve. And this might not work the first time, but let's see if it does. No, it's not. Okay, so I need to select a completed profile. It's not automatically going to fill in that line on the bottom. So actually what I might be able to do, maybe this will work. Aha, there we go. So since I was able to show that previous sketch, not all of my lines need to be a part of the same sketch. So even though that one was part of that completely different sketch, it still worked that I selected it. So yeah, anyway, this is just a flat plane that I'm filling. It's really simple. So I press apply, and that covers it there. And then same thing back here. I'm going to select that curve, and it's going to fill it for me. Cool, so that's all super simple. The next thing that I'm going to do is create geometry. This is when I go from the surface modeling to the physically body modeling. So if I was going to say 3D print this house, or this mouse, I would want a housing that was, I don't know, 3 or 4 millimeters thick that I would print all the way around, and then it would house the electronics inside it. So the way I can do that is with this thicken tool. If I click on that and just select the face, it will automatically thicken it to a certain amount. But you notice how it's not, it's only thickening this outside surface, not that surface. So I want that to be included. One thing I could do is just click on them like that, but then it doesn't really add, actually it totally does work. Yeah, so I could just click on that surface and then click on this surface and it would work. But I just want to show you guys one more feature before I do that. In case you want to combine multiple surfaces into one, there's this other tool, combine routine multiple intersection sheet bodies. So if I click on this, it's adding a couple of different surfaces together. So I can click on that one, and that one, and then press OK. Now all of these are kind of considered one surface. So if I thicken it now, it's automatically going to include both those sides. So that combine tool might be useful in certain other scenarios, basically. So yeah. Now, this is creating a 3D geometry. It's 2.5 millimeters thick. That's perfectly fine. I'll press, oh, I'll also point out that if you wanted it to thicken on the outside instead of inside, I could make that 0, and then make this part 2. And now it's thickening. Oh, it's not. Oh, maybe I have to reverse the direction. Yeah, because it was doing it, like if one of them's 0, I guess it makes the other one, it assumes you want to do it on the inside. Yeah, so anyway, I've created a thickened geometry all the way around. It's doing something a little bit goofy right there. I could fix that, or I could use a hack. So what I'm going to actually do is go back into my thickened geometry. I'm going to make it thicken inside by reversing that. I'll go 2.5. Cool. And then I want to create a base for my part. And so in this case, I can use that big profile that I created earlier. So I'm going to highlight that, go back to home, and I'm just going to use a basic extrude feature. And to decide how long I want it, maybe I'll put it 2.5 as well, so it's the same thickness all the way around. And then if I want to have this combined with my geometry, I have to make sure that this Boolean is selected properly. So right now it's got subtract selected, so it would actually delete the bottom half of my surface geometry. Actually, this might be a good way to get rid of those little tabby things that are sticking down. I could reverse this direction entirely, so make it stick out, and then have it, if I had it selected as subtract, oh, and then I need to select my body. This is my body. Press OK. See how I just got rid of those little tab things that came down? That was just a way to clean things up. And then I'm also going to create a base for this, so I would go back to use the same exact sketch, also extrude, and this time, instead of subtracting, I'm going to unite. So now this is just creating a simple body for me to unite to. I'm going to make it 2.5 millimeters. And I'm also going to reflect it downwards, because if I had it extrude up, there would be this kind of annoying race going all the way around it. But if I make it down, then it will get rid of that. I have to do it like this, 2.5 and 0. What? Oops. Here we go, direction. Reverse direction. There we go. Uh-oh. Update warning, failure report. It says that failed. Oh, I think I know why. So this is extruding downwards at 2.5 millimeters, and I'm uniting it to this body. So why is it failing? Perhaps it's because, remember when we did that extrude cut? Maybe there's, like, these two geometries are not actually intersecting. In fact, they're sharing a plane on the very bottom, so that's like, both planes are perfectly in line with each other. So maybe if I had it extrude upwards as well, at least a very small amount. Oh, I need to make this negative in order to have extrude upwards. So now it's going into my part, and they're intersecting slightly. And there we go, that solved the problem. Yeah, so there's a bunch of little tricks and things that you kind of learn as you're developing your Siemens NX skills to be able to solve a couple things like that. Anyway, I will do some more things later with this mouse file, but for now, that's the end of this basic surface modeling tutorial. So I'll see you guys in the next one.